Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. 3 days. That's all it was supposed to be. A quick weekend work trip to Charleston for a leadership summit. Good food, good wine, long presentations. I was supposed to come back exhausted, jet-lagged, and mildly annoyed at how little I got to relax. Instead, I came back unsettled. The first red flag slapped me in the face before I even stepped into the house. My garage code didn't work. The keypad blinked red at me like I'd punched in the digits wrong. I tried again. Still nothing. I stood there with my suitcase half-zipped and my tie loosened, confused. Eventually, I rang the doorbell. Lauren opened it in yoga pants and a loose hoodie, looking surprised but not exactly thrilled. "You're back early," she said, her eyes flicking behind me like someone might be following. "It's Sunday. I said I'd be back by noon," I replied. "Oh, right. Sorry, I just lost track of time." We kissed, awkwardly. I blamed the 3-day absence. But something was off. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her phone buzzed in her hoodie pocket, and she ignored it too quickly, like it was hot to the touch. "Everything all right?" I asked as I rolled my suitcase in. "Yeah," she said too fast. "Just Kayla and I have been planning the baby shower, you know? It's a lot. It's this Saturday, and she's panicking. Hormones. You know how it is." I nodded. "Jason and Kayla. Our best couple friends. Jason's been my ride or die since college, and Kayla, sweetest soul you'd ever meet. They just hit 7 months pregnant, and Lauren had basically adopted the entire process. Planning the shower, helping with the nursery. She even made a Pinterest board titled Baby Showers Blessings." I had to admit, she was committed, but still something fell off. The house was spotless, more so than usual. No laundry basket out. Dishes all cleaned. Living room fluffed to showroom level. Lauren always kept the place nice, but this was magazine cover clean. "You expecting company?" I joked. She smiled. "Nope, just missed you." But her tone didn't match the words. As the day rolled on, I tried to shake it off. I unpacked, caught up on emails, and grilled steaks while she poured wine and played Spotify from her phone. Everything looked right, smelled right, but under it all was something I couldn't name. A tension, a pulse I couldn't trace. The real moment came when I went to grab a beer from the downstairs fridge. As I passed the guest room, now more of a storage space, I noticed something odd. The door was ajar. Nothing strange about that, except Lauren always kept it closed. Inside, the window was slightly open, the curtain fluttering. The room smelled faintly different. Not bad, not good, just different. Like cologne I didn't recognize, mixed with the faint scent of body spray. I closed the window, still telling myself I was being paranoid. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something else. The rocking chair was there. It had been moved. We didn't even own a rocking chair until last week when Lauren mentioned Kayla's nursery and said, "They got this beautiful wooden one, Derek. I kind of want one just like it for our future baby." It was sitting in the corner now, facing the window, not angled like we left it. Just that subtle. Just enough to scream that someone had sat in it recently. And when I touched the armrest, it was warm. I didn't say anything to Lauren. Not yet. That night, while she slept next to me, peaceful and silent, I lay awake. Something was wrong. I didn't have proof. I didn't have a smoking gun. But something had changed in our home, and in her. The next day, I opened our Amazon account to reorder razors. Instead, I found a recent purchase I never made. A lacy black set of lingerie. Size small. Shipped to our house. But not bought by me. It sat in the delivery box on the edge of our bed, innocently wrapped in pink tissue paper like it wasn't a ticking bomb. The lingerie. ID found it by accident. The package had been left in our mailbox while I was out picking up groceries. I saw the return label first, some boutique in Atlanta. Lauren had never shopped there. Curiosity turned into suspicion before I even made it to the living room. I tore it open, half expecting something dumb like a planner or candle. Instead, I pulled out a silk-thin bra and matching panties, black, delicate, expensive. The kind of thing you'd wear for someone new, someone you wanted to impress, not the man you've been married to for 7 years. And certainly not something Lauren would ever wear for me. Not lately anyway. Not with how cold things had gotten between us at night. I sat there, just staring at it for what felt like forever. My mind started pulling threads I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. The extra-long grocery runs, the sudden bursts of kindness, followed by strange aloofness, the nursery chair, the fake smiling. But most of all, the new routine, Lauren volunteering to help get supplies for Jason and Kayla's baby shower. She'd been over there constantly. Sometimes I even joked, "Are you sure you're not the one having the baby with them?" And she would just laugh and say, "You're ridiculous." Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. But this lingerie, this was something else. Shed ordered it, and according to our shared Amazon account, it had been delivered 2 days ago while I was out of town. She hadn't mentioned it, hadn't even tried to hide it from the order history, which made me wonder, did she forget to delete it? Or did she think I'd never look? I could have confronted her right there, but something inside me stopped. A cold part, a calculating part. Instead, I stood up, grabbed the box, and walked it down to the garage. That's where I hatched the idea. Not full revenge, not yet, but a small bite. Enough to make whoever she was buying this for feel it. I went to my tool drawer and pulled out the oldest pair of scissors I had, the kind rusted on one edge. I took the bra and very delicately snipped one of the straps, just enough to cause it to snap under tension. Then the panties. I pulled one seam loose and added a small cut near the waistband, almost invisible unless you tugged at it. It wouldn't ruin it completely, just enough to humiliate, enough to surprise whoever got to see her in it. I folded it back neatly and placed it in the box, then left it back on the shelf near where our old photo albums were stored, somewhere she wouldn't look unless she was searching for it. The moment I walked back into the kitchen, Lauren was there, humming and slicing strawberries for some Pinterest-inspired punch. She turned, wiped her hands on a towel, and said, "I'm thinking of adding cucumber to the lemonade. What do you think?" I stared at her. She looked perfect, the kind of perfect you only put on when you're covering something up. "Sounds fancy," I replied. "Is it for the shower?" She nodded. "Jason and Kayla are counting on me. I'm basically their planner at this point." She said it with pride, like this was her big break. I watched her carefully, noticed how she didn't ask where I'd been or what I was holding when I came in. Didn't mention the package. Just moved on, cheerful, distracted. I smiled and said I'd go upstairs for a bit. Over the next few days, I kept quiet, played my part, but I watched closely. Thursday afternoon, I came home early and heard her talking on the phone in the kitchen. I stayed out of view behind the hallway wall. Her voice was soft, cheerful, but something the tone was rehearsed. "No, it's fine. I'll come by around 5. Just tell Kayla I'll bring the rest of the stuff then." No, she doesn't suspect a thing. She's too busy picking out onesie patterns. There was a pause, and then a laugh I hadn't heard in months. "Not with me. I know. I miss you too." She hung up. Then silence. I didn't move for another 10 seconds. That night, she kissed me goodbye before heading out with a small tote bag. Claimed she was running supplies over to Jason's place again. Kayla wasn't feeling well. "She's getting overwhelmed," Lauren said. "I just want to help." She smelled like fresh shampoo and vanilla lotion, the good kind she only wore on special occasions. Her eyes didn't meet mine as she left. Once she was gone, I waited 20 minutes. Then I opened our laptop, navigated to our shared Amazon account, and started looking through past orders. Nothing new, nothing recent, until I checked the archives section, and there it was, a bottle of men's cologne. Not one I recognized, and a handwritten note option, gift wrapped with a custom message. "To Jay, you make the waiting worth it. G." I stared at that single letter like it had burned itself into my skull. Jason? My chest tightened. No, no way. My best friend? Lauren wouldn't know. Not yet. I couldn't make that jump. I wouldn't. There had to be another explanation. But I knew one thing. Someone was about to receive a gift from my wife, and they were not going to enjoy it. 2 days later, I stood in the middle of my garage, still staring at the archived Amazon order like it could offer more if I glared at it hard enough. I hadn't said a word to Lauren. I hadn't even hinted that I knew. The lingerie, the cologne, the whisper on the phone to someone called Jay. It didn't add up neatly yet, but my gut had already declared war. And the more I tried to calm myself, the more I realized something else. Jason's name was the only one I knew that started with a J and came with convenient access to Lauren. I hated myself for even thinking it. Jason was like a brother. He'd seen me through some of my darkest years. He gave the toast at our wedding, for God's sake. But the signs, they were lining up like dominoes, daring me to knock them down. That's when the paranoia started to grow teeth. I told myself I needed proof, real proof. So, I waited until Lauren left the house again. She said she was going to help Kayla with decorations and brought over a bag of crafts and a punch bowl. I watched from the window as she pulled out, then waited 5 full minutes before I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance. She drove to Jason and Kayla's house, just like she said she would. Parked right in front, walked up to the porch, and rang the bell. Jason answered. They smiled, hugged, a little longer than I liked. But then Kayla came to the door behind them, holding a basket of folded baby clothes. She waved at Lauren, who smiled back and said something I couldn't hear. Then they all went inside. The door closed. I sat in my car across the street, the engine idling, my hand clenched on the gear shift. I told myself to be rational. If she were really cheating with Jason, would she go to their house when Kayla's home? That's insanity. No one's that bold, right? Unless they were. Unless Kayla was the cover. Unless the whole thing, this baby shower planning, the nursery prep, all of it was a sick kind of camouflage. That's when it hit me. The chair. The same rocking chair I saw slightly turn in our guest room. The one Lauren said Kayla had bought for the nursery. Was that their place? Was that where they were meeting? I stayed parked for half an hour, eyes fixed on the front door. Eventually, Lauren stepped outside alone. She pulled something from her tote bag, a small, wrapped box, and handed it to Jason, who followed her out. They stood there for a minute. Then Kayla came out too. They talked, laughed. Jason kissed Kayla on the forehead. I blinked. Kissed her. Not Lauren. I felt like a fool. Back home, I paced. Overanalyzing. Overthinking. The box could have been anything. The cologne, maybe it wasn't even for Jason. Jay could be someone else. A coworker, a friend, someone I didn't know. Hell, even Justin from her running club came to mind. He'd been around more lately. Tall, fit, charming. Lauren always laughed a little louder when he was around. He wore cologne. Maybe she bought it for him. Maybe he was the real Jay. The next morning, I decided to test a theory. I invited Justin for a beer. Casual. I told Lauren he'd help me with some landscaping ideas. She barely reacted. Almost too barely. At the bar, I watched him closely. The guy was textbook charismatic. All smiles, all energy. The kind of guy who made people feel special when he talked to them. I asked him about Lauren, indirectly, of course. Hey, thanks for helping her with the punch table last week. She said you had a good eye for the layout. He laughed. Yeah, she panicked over the color scheme. I told her pink and mint was fine, but she was convinced it needed natural wood tones. She's got an eye for detail, man. That felt like a reach. Too much detail. My fingers tightened around my bottle. You guys hang out often? He shook his head. Not really. Just at the meetups or baby shower stuff. I barely even know her outside that. A lie? Maybe. Maybe not. Then he leaned in, like sharing a joke. She did ask me for cologne suggestions, though. Said she was buying a gift for someone who hated strong scents. I told her about this cedarwood one I use. Real light. I stared. Cedarwood. Exactly what the archived order said. So it was for him? I almost exploded right there. Every cell in my body screamed to drag this guy outside and demand answers. But instead, I nodded and smiled. Nice. Hope he liked it. Justin chuckled. She said it was for her brother's birthday. No idea if he even got it. Brother. Lauren doesn't have a brother. That night, I couldn't stop looking at her while we sat on the couch watching Netflix. I don't even remember the show. She leaned against me like nothing was wrong. Like the world was exactly how it was supposed to be. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But I didn't. Instead, I waited until she was asleep, then got her phone. She was a heavy sleeper. She always had been. I tried her passcode twice. Nothing. Third time was the charm. Same code she used for her gym locker. Lazy. Predictable. There were no texts from Justin. But she had deleted all her messages for the past 2 weeks. All of them. That was the moment everything cracked for me. It didn't matter if it was Jason or Justin or someone else with a J. The moment she erased those conversations, she made it real. She was hiding something. The next morning, I exploded. Why are your messages gone? I asked, voice calm, dangerously calm. She looked at me, blank-faced. What messages? On your phone. All of them. Wiped. She blinked once. Oh, yeah, dalatabwing. My storage was full. That's not how storage works, Lauren. She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe I hit something by mistake. What's with the interrogation? I wanted to believe her. I did, but I couldn't. Still, I had no proof. No smoking gun. Just shadows and guesses. You think I'm cheating on you? She asked suddenly, crossing her arms. Her voice was sharp, wounded. I hesitated. I think you're lying to me. She scoffed. Then maybe you don't know me at all. And just like that, she walked out. I stood in our living room, surrounded by the silence she left behind, and for a brief moment, I believed I'd made a mistake. But later that night, as I sat scrolling through our shared Amazon account again, a new order popped up. Another item. Another gift. This time, it was labeled for nursery. Except we don't have a nursery. Jason and Kayla do. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure I'd been wrong after all. The nursery item arrived on a Tuesday morning. Lauren was at yoga, and I was working from home when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a box the size of a toolbox resting neatly on our doormat. The label crisp, the return address from the same boutique in Atlanta. The same one that had sent the lingerie. No gift note this time, just a packing slip folded and tucked under the flap. Hand-carved nameplate, walnut finish, custom engraving, to new beginnings. My fingers twitched. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The idea that she was buying things for another family's nursery wasn't new. But this wasn't diapers or streamers. This was intimate, personal, decorative, the kind of thing you gift someone you see a future with. A nameplate. For what? The wall? The crib? To new beginnings. It sounded like a goodbye, tucked inside a present. But she hadn't said goodbye to me. Not yet. I left the box on the kitchen counter, plain as day. When Lauren got back, hair damp and cheeks flushed, she paused at the sight of it. She looked at me. I looked at her. What's that? She asked. Her voice was careful, but not quite nervous. I play dumb. You tell me. It has your name on it. She walked over, picked it up like it was a wild animal, then turned away and took it into the spare room. I waited. She didn't come back out for a long time. That night, we didn't speak much. She acted like everything was normal. Like that box hadn't arrived. Like I wasn't putting the pieces together behind my eyes. But something shifted in me. I stopped trying to catch her in the act. I started studying the cracks she'd already left behind. Wednesday, I called Kayla. Innocent enough. Asked how things were going with the nursery. Almost done, she said cheerfully. Lauren's been a godsend. I don't know what I'd do without her. I laughed, but it came out dry. She's really been over a lot. Oh yeah, Kayla said. She even built a rocking chair by herself. Jason and I were useless. That made my pulse tick. Lauren had put the chair together? Alone? In their house. I filed it away. How's Jason? I added. Overwhelmed, she said with a chuckle. He's worried about the crib measurements like it's brain surgery. Then she paused. Actually, he mentioned he needed to talk to you about something. Not sure what. Said he might drop by sometime this week. That caught me off guard. Jason hadn't mentioned a word, but that wasn't new. He hadn't been around much lately. Texts short, calls brief, always busy. Later that day, I messaged him. Me. Heard you needed to talk? Jason, yeah. Soon. Me. Everything all right? Jason, let's talk in person. That was it. No details. No urgency. Just enough to keep me spinning. That night, I watched Lauren get dressed to meet a friend for drinks. A new top. New earrings. She even curled her hair. You look nice, I said flatly. Thanks, she replied, barely making eye contact. Just girls' night. Which girls? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Riley and Jen. Riley had moved to Colorado 6 months ago. Jen was pregnant and bedridden. Tell them I said hi. I added. She nodded, grabbed her bag, and walked out like nothing was wrong. But I didn't follow her this time. I waited, and when she was gone, I went back to her closet. I wasn't proud of it, but pride stopped being useful a long time ago. I sifted through hangers and bags, fingers trailing over old coats and winter scarves. Then I found it, tucked behind an unused laptop case on the top shelf, another gift box. Smaller, red ribbon. Inside was a leather bracelet. Masculine, classy, and engraved with 2 initials. LJ. My breath caught. Not again. I flipped the box over. A small note was folded beneath it, in case I can't say it out loud. That was all. No name, no date, just enough to light me on fire. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I took the bracelet, slid it into my coat pocket, and left everything else untouched. If she noticed, she didn't mention it. The next morning, she was cheerful again. Too cheerful. Made French toast. Kissed me on the forehead. Hummed while she packed another tote bag full of baby items. I'm dropping these off at Kayla's, she said. Then yoga. Back before dinner. I nodded, my mouth full of questions I didn't ask. Want you to come with? I tested. She froze for just a second. No, no need. I'll be quick. And off she went. I didn't follow her car this time. I followed Jason's. He left work early. I saw his SUV pull out of the parking garage around 2:40 p.m., and I tailed him 3 cars back. He didn't go home. He didn't go to Kayla's. He went to a flower shop. Small, local. The kind with handwritten signs and wind chimes on the door. I parked a block away and watched from the corner. Jason came out 10 minutes later, holding a bouquet. Not roses. Not tulips. Something wilder. Lavender, eucalyptus, some kind of peach-colored flower I didn't recognize. The kind of bouquet you pick when you want it to look effortless, but still make someone feel seen. He didn't head to Kayla's. He drove to a neighborhood 10 minutes from mine. Parked outside a house I didn't recognize. Waited, and then Lauren pulled up behind him. My heart hit the floor. They didn't kiss. They didn't even hug. She walked past him, barely looking at him, and went inside. Jason followed her a minute later, holding the flowers. I stayed in the car, white-knuckled. 40 minutes passed. Then Jason left. Alone, carrying nothing. 10 more minutes. Then Lauren came out, got in her car, and drove away in the opposite direction. I followed her home. I said nothing that night, but inside me, something had snapped. Because now I wasn't just guessing. Now I knew. They weren't just hiding something. They were rehearsing how to reveal it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the streetlights flickering through the blinds and the sound of Lauren's steady breathing beside me. She always slept like the dead, peaceful, untouched. I studied her face in the darkness and wondered if she could feel me unraveling. Probably not. She hadn't noticed the bracelet was gone. Or maybe she had and decided to let it go, thinking she'd hidden it well enough for me not to connect the dots. Elgie. If that wasn't proof, I didn't know what was. But proof wasn't enough anymore. I needed to catch them, needed to see it, burn it into my memory, so that every time she denied it, I could throw it in her face like broken glass. The next day, I called in sick, claimed I had food poisoning. Lauren left mid-morning in running gear and said she was meeting Kayla for a prenatal yoga session. I asked if she wanted company. "You'd be the only guy there," she said, smiling. "Besides, I'm not even sure Kayla's going to make it. She's been having backaches." That sentence felt rehearsed. Not clumsy, not forced. Just pre-planned. The kind of lie you repeat in your head before you say it out loud. The moment she left, I got in my car and drove to the little house where I saw them last time. I didn't park on the street this time. I found a spot a block away and walked through a back alley, cutting through fences, ducking low. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of fury that only betrayal could birth. The house looked empty from the front. No cars in the drive. Curtains drawn. But around the back, the blinds were open just a crack. And that's all I needed. They were inside. I saw Lauren's tote bag on the floor. Her shoes beside it. Jason's voice drifted through the slightly cracked window, low, deliberate. I couldn't make out the words. But then I saw her. She was laughing, smiling in a way she hadn't with me in months. She reached out, touched his arm. A small touch. Casual. Intimate. My chest burned. I didn't barge in. I didn't kick the door down. I stood there, crouched, watching. My brain screamed to move, to do something, but my body stayed frozen. And then I heard something that made my stomach turn. "Lauren, what if he finds out?" "Jason, he won't. Not unless you tell him." "Lauren, I hate lying." "Jason, no you don't." She didn't deny it. She just smiled. I walked away before I did something I'd regret. I spent the next few hours sitting in my car, thinking, planning. I knew now, knew it deep in my bones. This wasn't flirting or emotional cheating or something I could spin into a misunderstanding. This was betrayal in its purest form. And not just by her, but by him. Jason, my best friend, my brother in every way except blood. The man who'd toasted at my wedding, who'd once pulled me out of a bar fight and said, "We're family. Always. Family." What a joke. When I got home, Lauren was already there. Hair wet, smelling like eucalyptus shampoo. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "I missed you today." I almost laughed, almost told her right there. But I held it. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't done yet. That night, I searched every drawer, every file, every folder in our shared laptop. I even looked in her email drafts. And that's where I found it. A message she hadn't sent yet. Subject, after the shower body. We have to be careful. He's starting to notice things. I'm trying to play it cool, but if he asks questions, I might have to spin something. Let's just make it through this weekend. After that, we can figure it out. No name, no details. But I didn't need them. The baby shower was 3 days away. Everything snapped into place. This was their deadline, their event, their final performance. After that, I'd be disposable, replaced, but not if I moved first. The next day, I played the husband role to perfection. Asked her about balloon colors. Helped print little baby trivia cards. Even suggested we buy extra champagne for the toast. "You're really into this," she said with a small laugh. I smiled back. I just wanted to be perfect for them. That night, I drove to Kayla's. She was surprised to see me. Told me Jason was at the hardware store getting hooks for the banner. "Mind if we talk?" I asked. She let me in, led me to the nursery. It was beautiful. White walls, soft yellow lighting. The rocking chair sat in the corner, next to a crib draped with a gauzy canopy. I turned to her. "Kayla, I need to ask you something." She narrowed her eyes. "What's wrong?" "It's about Lauren and Jason." The air shifted. She didn't speak for several seconds. "What about them?" I pulled out my phone, showed her the picture I'd taken from outside the house. Lauren's bag, Jason's shoes, the two of them laughing. Her face changed, not with shock, but with recognition. "You knew," I said. Kayla looked down at her hands. "I wasn't supposed to find out, but I did. A few weeks ago, I read a message on his tablet. It was short. Just said, 'Same time tomorrow. I'll bring the key.' I confronted him. He said it was nothing. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe he was just stressed, that it wasn't what I thought. But it was, I said quietly. She nodded. Then she whispered something that chilled me. 'I'm not just having Jason's baby. I'm about to deliver hell.' I didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But I didn't ask. I didn't need to, because I just made my decision. I wasn't going to stop them. I was going to let them walk straight into their own trap. And I was going to make sure they never walked out the same. The morning of the baby shower arrived with unseasonal gray skies, as if the weather itself sensed what was about to unfold. The house buzzed with final preparations. Streamers draped from the ceiling, pastel balloons floated in clustered corners, and the air smelled faintly of cake frosting and fabric softener. Lauren moved through it all like a hostess possessed, smiling, laughing, making sure every detail was flawless. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have admired her. She was good at pretending. Too good. Every time she touched my arm or kissed my cheek in front of our guests, I wanted to ask her how she could fake so well. How her eyes didn't betray the sickness she was hiding behind that bright, curated smile. Jason arrived late, as usual, carrying a box of party favors like he'd actually helped put them together. His eyes found mine the second he walked in, and for the briefest moment, something flickered there. Guilt? Caution? It disappeared fast. He grinned, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Looks amazing in here, man. You guys went all out." "We wanted it to be special," I said. "It's not every day your best friend brings a new life into the world." He laughed and nodded, but his shoulders stayed a little too tight, and I caught him glancing at Lauren across the room more times than he probably meant to. Kayla played her part to perfection, too. She wore a pale green dress that made her glow like sunlight. Her smile was soft, but I could see it beneath the glow was steel. She hadn't forgotten what she told me. I'm about to deliver hell. I didn't know what she had planned, but I trusted it was coming. And I knew when it hit, it would not miss. We made it through the opening speeches, the ridiculous baby-themed games, the cutting of the cake. Every moment I watched them. Not obviously, not with anger, but with the calm stillness of a man who'd already decided what would happen next. Jason stood beside Kayla, arm around her shoulders, playing the doting father-to-be. Lauren hovered close, taking photos, making comments about her favorite couple, the picture of innocent friendship. No one would suspect. No one watching that room would ever guess the truth lived in the stolen glances and nervous shifts. Until later, as the guests began to thin out, people hugged goodbye, carrying favor bags and leftover cookies. I leaned over to Lauren and whispered, "Take a break. I'll handle cleanup." She smiled, tired but satisfied, and disappeared down the hallway toward the bathroom. Jason wasn't far behind. He said he needed to check on something in the nursery, Kayla's nursery. I gave it 2 minutes. Then I followed. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. I stepped slowly, breath measured, until I reached the nursery door. It was slightly ajar. I heard whispers inside. I paused, waited. "Lauren, we shouldn't do this now. Not here." "Jason, I just needed to see you. You looked amazing today." "Lauren, you're insane." "Jason, you love it." And then I pushed the door open. Neither of them touched, but they might as well have. Jason stood too close. Her hand was on the edge of the crib, the same one I helped assemble for Kayla. His back straightened like someone had snapped a wire inside him. "Hey," I said, calm, measured. "Everything all right in here?" They turned too quickly. Smiles fumbled. Guilt crawled over their faces like sweat. Jason cleared his throat. "Just checking on the decorations." Lauren blinked. I was just showing him the stuffed animals. "I thought Kayla decorated this." I asked. Silence. I could have sworn she told me that. Said she picked out everything, even the placement of the chair. My eyes drifted to the wooden rocking chair in the corner. But maybe I misunderstood. Maybe you two had a different plan for this room. Jason's mouth opened, but no sound came. Lauren's eyes were wide now. Not just surprised, terrified. "I know about the house," I said. "I know about the bracelet, the messages, the flowers, the visits, the lies." Jason took a step forward. "Derek, no," I cut in. "Don't. You've had enough words. Save them for someone who still believes you." Lauren's voice broke through, soft and pleading. "It's not what you think, really," I said, tilting my head. "Because what I think is that my wife and my best friend have been desecrating the nursery of his pregnant fiancée. What I think is that you've both been lying for months while I smiled and helped you carry on the charade. What I think, Lauren, is that you came into this room more than once with him, and you sat in that chair like it belonged to you." She flinched. Tears brimmed at the edges of her eyes, but I felt nothing for them. Nothing at all. "I didn't want it to happen," she said. "But it did," I replied coldly. "You let it. Over and over. You planned around it. Lied for it. Protected it. You didn't trip into this. You chose it." Jason looked down, hands clenched at his sides. "I never meant to." "You did," I said. "You just didn't think you'd get caught." And then I turned around and walked away. No screaming. No punching. No chaos. Because this wasn't the end. This was the start of something much more poetic. When I got back to the living room, Kayla stood near the window, watching the driveway. I nodded once. She nodded back. We were done playing nice. The next morning felt eerily calm. Lauren acted like nothing had happened. She moved through the kitchen, humming while slicing strawberries, wearing that same damn hoodie like the night I came back for Charleston. Like we hadn't stood in the nursery yesterday, our marriage bleeding out at our feet. She didn't bring it up, didn't ask what I'd do next. I guess she hoped silence could undo everything. But silence, in this case, was just the rope she'd given me to hang her. "Do you have plans today?" she asked, not looking at me. "Actually," I said, sipping my coffee without blinking. "Kayla asked me to come over. Said she wanted to talk." A flicker. There was the panic, gone as quickly as it came. "She okay?" she asked. "She's fine," I said. "Just wants to clear the air." I left before she could ask more. Kayla had already texted me that morning. "Come by. I have everything." When I pulled up to her house, she greeted me with the door already open and a laptop waiting on the kitchen counter. "I recorded it," she said, not bothering with hello. I stared at the screen. "You got them?" She nodded, eyes cold. I figured if I couldn't trust the man who got me pregnant, the least I could do is make sure the world saw what I was dealing with. She clicked play. The footage wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. Jason walking in. Lauren greeting him, their voices hushed, flirty. She sat in the rocking chair. That chair, legs tucked beneath her, while he crouched in front of her, holding her hands. The things they said weren't sexual. They were worse. Affectionate. Familiar. Like people who'd done this 100 times. Like it wasn't a mistake anymore, just routine. I keep thinking about how it'll be when it's just us, Lauren said on the recording. Jason, soon. After the shower, we'll figure it out. I promise. They kissed. Soft. Long. The camera caught it all from the top corner of the nursery. I didn't say anything. I can send it to you, Kayla said. Or we can do something better. She opened a small, white envelope. Inside was a USB flash drive. This, she said, holding it up, is going inside the baby announcement envelopes we're sending out next week. But Jason's copy? He'll get his early. I raised an eyebrow. You sure? She laughed. He cheated on his pregnant fiancée. In the nursery. Of our child. With your wife. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The plan was simple. Brutal. Beautiful. Kayla would call Jason that evening. Tell him she wanted to talk. Apologize for the weirdness at the shower. She'd ask him to come by. She'd give him his baby announcement envelope like nothing was wrong. And inside, instead of a photo or a sonogram printout, he'd find a flash drive. Meanwhile, I had my own move to make. When I got home, Lauren was in the bedroom, folding laundry with her headphones in. She didn't notice me walk past her. I went straight to the closet and pulled out my small suitcase. I didn't pack much, just what I needed for a few days. Essentials. The rest could burn, for all I cared. She came into the room just as I was zipping it up. Are you going somewhere? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Yeah, I said. Just for a bit. Where? Kayla's. Her jaw tensed. You're staying with her? I turned to face her. Why not? At least I know where I stand with her. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then, quieter, we haven't even talked. Nothing to talk about, I replied. You made your choice. I never said I was leaving you. But you were planning to, I said, stepping closer. You and Jason. After the shower. That's what you told him, right? She froze. The blood drained from her face. Yeah, I said softly. I know everything. She looked like she wanted to deny it. Cry. Beg. But she didn't. Not yet. I walked past her and down the hall. When I reached the front door, I paused. Oh, I added, you might want to check the mail tomorrow. Jason's going to have a surprise for you. I left without another word. At Kayla's, we didn't talk much. She poured us wine. We sat in silence. The kind of silence only people who've both been gutted can share. Later that night, we walked into the nursery, their nursery, and stood where they had stood, touched what they had tainted. The rocking chair sat in its place like nothing had happened. I reached out, ran my fingers along the back. Kayla turned to me, holding something in her hand. A new flash drive. For your records, she said. I took it. That night, I stayed in the guest room. Slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Jason's truck was gone from his driveway. Lauren hadn't called. I figured she was still hoping it would all blow over. It wouldn't, because Jason, he called me. At 7:13 a.m., my phone rang. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. His voice came through seconds later, frantic, angry, broken. What did you do? Derek, what the hell did you do? You sent that to Kayla? You showed her that. I trusted you. I thought. I deleted it before he could finish. Later that afternoon, Lauren finally called. I didn't answer. Then a message. Lauren, please come home. We need to talk. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it off. Let her sweat. Let her feel what it was like to lose control. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.